Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are enjoying your lunch. I'm going to speak a little bit about how to protect your business from cyber attacks. What should be done? I'm going to try a very practical approach. We'll try to dive in a little bit into a case study, which I'm sure you all heard of, last week's Wannacry attack. And then I'll try to give you some pointers on what can be done and should be done in order to protect your businesses. Finally, and I think this is a very important part of the presentation, I'll say a few words about ELTA's vision for cyber in Maryland. And as you'll see, it ties in very, very well with the governor's Excel Maryland program, which we weren't aware of, but we managed to kind of pinpoint into his vision. So can someone take my presentation up? Oh, great. Now, I don't have any control of the slide, so I'll be saying next slide, previous slide, and so on and so forth. Let's see how it works. So next slide. Wow. Okay. So when we are talking about cyberspace, well, cyber is everywhere. Cyber is in every domain of our lives. So when we are talking about cyberspace, it's very important to try and model this space to understand what we are talking about. So usually I divide cyberspace into four unique domains of protections required and 4 different types of end users. Let's briefly speak about end users. We have our consumers. When I'm thinking about a consumer, well, it's myself, yourselves, but I usually give my mother as an example. Now, my mother is a very accomplished lady. She retired a few years ago. She was a government employee of the Israeli Ministry of Education all her life, all her career. She is very proficient on a computer, but she doesn't understand anything about cyber. She knows that cyber is important, obviously, because I'm the general manager of the cyber division. But she doesn't really understand the threats. My mother needs to be protected. It's part of the government's responsibility to ensure that she has the tools and the understanding of the potential risks in order to be able to protect herself in cyberspace. Then we have companies, enterprises, SMBs, SMEs, ranging from 3 guys in a garage to very large multinational companies. They need to be protected as well. Mission-critical systems, critical infrastructures are the next echelon. The systems that govern our day-to-day life. Healthcare, transportation, energy, water, government offices, defense industry. All these are critical infrastructures that need to be protected and need an even better level of protection than enterprises. And finally, we have the government. Now, in terms of protection types, we see 4 distinct types of protection. First and foremost, IT and information security capabilities. These are your antiviruses, your firewalls, your intrusion detection systems, your intrusion protection systems. These types of solutions have been around for very long. Today, they are tied into the world of cyber, but they used to be referred to as IT security. Now, everyone needs a firewall. The state of Maryland needs a firewall, but my mother needs a firewall as well. Everyone needs an antivirus. Then we have security operations and analysis capabilities. And the idea here is that these capabilities take information from the IT security capabilities and take some contextual and operations-related information in order to create, and this is a very, very important buzzword in cyber today, in order to create situational awareness. Well, basically, we understand today that a singular tool is unable to detect a complex attack. In order to detect a complex attack, you need an aggregate of tools. But even this isn't enough. And today there is an understanding that the only effective way to actually be able to prevent an attack or to mitigate an attack, which is the name of the game today, you need to know about it in advance. And for this, you need cyber threat intelligence. So this is the 3rd category. And finally, there is a distinct category that is cyber intelligence capabilities, digital forensic capabilities, and these are the ones utilized by law enforcement agencies, police forces, intelligence services, in order to be able to track the bad guys in cyberspace. So this is a separate and distinct capability. So next slide, please. So when we are talking about the cyber market, then we are seeing several very interesting trends. Number one, cyber is perceived today as a national interest. By the way, this wasn't the case a few years ago. This is an emerging trend, but today everyone understands, including my mother, as I already mentioned, that cyber is important. And this is why we are seeing increased collaboration between the private sector and the public sector and the academia. Almost every day there's a new announcement about a new collaboration. We are also seeing an emphasis on local and indigenous capabilities, because when cyber is considered as a national interest, it means that every country, every state has to protect itself. It needs its inbred, inherent indigenous capabilities. We are seeing emerging regulation because, you know, it's sort of a Wild West today, cyberspace. I mean, we are letting our children roam around cyberspace, but it's a very dangerous place to roam around. So we need a regulation in place in order to create a safer cyberspace. And I must say that today the regulation is not keeping up with the pace of changes in cyberspace. And finally, and this ties in very, very well with Governor Hogan's vision, there is a lot of emphasis on innovation and expert manpower. And when people ask me today, what is the first challenge in cyber? The challenge is bringing in the right people, recruiting the proper analysts, finding the cyber experts. There is a major shortage in these type of experts today, and recruiting them, bringing them on board is basically the most important thing. This is true for businesses, and I'll speak about it in a bit. And this is true for companies like Elta, who is delivering cyber solutions. Now, the cyber marketplace is also a wild west, because there are many, many cyber companies, ranging from 3 guys in a garage to multinational, very large companies. And all of them are competing in the same tenders on the same opportunities. So in a singular tender, you can find a very heterogeneous lineup of competitors. It's a buyer's market, and this means that the buyers today are able to set the price, because there is always a company that is willing to take its prices down in order to be able to put a foot in the door, so to speak. So there is a very fierce competition in the cyber market space. Makes it very challenging for us, and like Secretary Gill said earlier, well, when you feel that you are in the first place, then you stop making an effort. You need to continue to push forward in order to remain in that place, and the fact that the market space is so challenging helps in this direction. And finally, it is a market that is extremely attractive to investors. There's a lot of money in cyber. There's a great buzz in cyber. People ask me, will it stay this way forever? Well, no. But at this point of time, it's very, very good to be a cyber company. Next slide, please. So on Friday, last Friday, 12 May, there was this major cyber attack. Now it's called the Wannacry attack or Wannacrypt attack. You actually want to cry when you are attacked by this piece of malware. But it's a very, very interesting case study. So let's briefly understand what happened in terms of a timeline. So the way this piece of malware works is that you get infected by pressing on a link. This link can be sent to you through an email, through a WhatsApp message, through a Dropbox link, whatever. As long as you click on the link, you are infected. Once you are infected, the malware propagates within your network, encrypts all your files, and changes your wallpaper to this red screen, where it basically says, hey, if you want your files back, you need to pay $300. That's not a lot. But taking into account that, well, the least figure I've seen is 100,000 computers were infected, well, there's quite a bit of money to be had. But this is not the interesting part. The interesting part was that this malware was based on an exploit, on a known exploit by the name of Eternal Blue. Now, timeline-wise, on the 14th of March, Microsoft published an alert, basically saying, hey, there's this exploit, Eternal Blue, you should patch your systems. Now, they didn't provide a patch for everything. Old XP machines, whoever uses them, weren't patched, but the newer versions of Windows were actually patched. So you could protect yourselves. Now, a bit later, 1 month later, April 14 is a very important day in this storyline, a group of hackers by the name of Shadow Brokers published the actual exploit. They said, hey, this is the Eternal Blue exploit. We are publishing it. Feel free to use it. They claim that it was based on an exploit that was leaked from a certain intelligence service. No confirmation for that at this point of time. And then on 12 May, this attack started. Now, the smallest figure that we hear is that 100,000 computers were infected. Globally, 150 countries. There's a higher figure that was quoted speaking about 230,000 computers. Now, this is an amazing number given the fact that it happened over 2 days. So what can be learned from this attack? Number one, it wasn't a zero-day malware. It was a known piece of malware. Lo and behold, 30% of the antiviruses identify it, block it, even before the attack. So you had to be with the other 70% or without an antivirus. If you would have installed the patch that Microsoft provided, you would have been protected. And still, 230,000 computers were infected, including the British NHS, the health service, including major corporations around the world in 150 countries. So, learning from this event, what can and should be done in order to protect your businesses. 2 slides forward, please. Okay. So Secretary Gill told you a little bit about IAI. IAI is Israel Aerospace Industries, the largest defense contractor in Israel. We have a broad range of expertise. We've been on the road for 60 years, fully owned by the government of Israel. Elta Systems is a group and subsidiary of IAI, and I'm the general manager of the cyber division in Elta Systems. 1 slide forward, please. As Secretary Gill mentioned, we have a subsidiary in the US, Elta North America. It's our US presence. It's a US-based company run by US citizens, and we are now in the process of converting it into a proxy company. And the idea is that it basically leverages on our technology within the US market. As you can see, it's located at Annapolis Junction, Maryland. So we are a Maryland-based company, and we have recently expanded significantly and are in a very important growth path at this point of time. 1 slide forward. IAI is also the leader of the Israeli Cyber Companies Consortium. Now, I mentioned that the competition in cyberspace is a fierce competition. Now, we understood very early in the game that in order to be able to provide our customers with end-to-end solutions, we need to be able to bring to the table other capabilities, additional capabilities. So we established ICCC together with 9 Israeli companies. You can see some of the names there, and I'm sure everyone knows Checkpoint, and everyone knows CyberArk, and everyone knows Variant. And together with these companies, we established a consortium that is endorsed by the Israeli Ministry of Economy. And this consortium is able to provide, under the ICCC name, an end-to-end solution for our customers. Next slide, please. Now, going into the concrete part of my presentation, what can you do in order to protect your businesses? So number one, Realize that IT security is not enough. Okay, so you have your antivirus, you have your firewall, you have your intrusion detection systems, but if you have a mission-critical system, a customer database, an important part of your system that you need to protect, you need to take some additional measures in order to be able to protect your organization. IT security is not enough. It's an important building block, but it's not enough. So you need to harden your system. Hardening means putting in place the best practices, ensuring that the patches are employed in time, making sure that you cover all the IT security aspects of your organization. But yet again, this is not enough. You need to constantly monitor your organization in order to detect anomalies. These anomalies may be telltale signs that a cyber attack is going on. And finally, and this is a key point, you need to be able to factor in intelligence. Maybe someone is targeting you at this specific moment. Today, the intelligence is available. You can purchase intelligence services. You can have companies monitor the darknet for you and see if your company name is mentioned. And this is especially relevant for critical infrastructures or for companies with higher profiles. Next slide, please. So when we are talking about cyber hardening layers, it's very important to understand that we start with the weakest link. And the weakest link is the human. Train your people. Train them to understand that cyber is an issue. Now, I was asked in one conference where I spoke, what would be the best way to attack you? I love these questions, but I decided to answer. So the answer is as follows. By the way, you can try, it won't work. If you want to try and attack me, call my secretary. Tell her, hey, so I'm meeting Esti tomorrow. Give a bombastic name, Secretary Gil. Meeting Esti tomorrow. And I have a presentation. I just want you to open the presentation on your computer to make sure that it opens well. That's it. Infected. That's all it takes. Now the question is, are your secretaries attuned to be very, very careful when such an event happens? When someone calls them and asks them to press a link or to open a presentation? The human factor is the weakest link in cyber. Train your people. Train your secretaries. Train your parents. Train your children. Because the awareness is the most important layer of cybersecurity. Then you need to have physical security as well. I mean, if your server is lying outside, someone will get hold of it and will infect it. But subsequently, you need very good IT security. You need dedicated hardening capabilities. You need monitoring capabilities. And you need mitigation capabilities. Once you are attacked, you should be able to react. You should be able to mitigate the attack. When you are a larger organization, you need the ability to conduct vulnerability assessments on risk analysis on an ongoing basis. You want to know if your organization is secure? Attack it. Have someone who doesn't know the organization attack it. And do it again in 6 months, because cyberspace is a very dynamic domain. So the attacks of today are not the ones that were used yesterday and are not the ones that will be used tomorrow. So you need to constantly test your organization. And if and when you are attacked, you need the ability, the in-house ability to analyze the attack and to understand the impacts. So you need at least a small-scale forensics lab. Next slide, please. So when we are talking about a program for protecting mission-critical systems, so let's assume you have a mission-critical system within your organization. So we are talking about 4 pillars. Number 1, vulnerability assessment and risk analysis. This should be ongoing, and I previously spoke a little bit about it. Number 2, monitoring capability. Have a cybersecurity operations center. It doesn't have to be large scale. It can be very small scale, but make sure you are monitoring your organization and detecting anomalies. Subsequently, training and assessment. Train your people and assess them. Training is easy. Assessing is very difficult. You know, when you train a group and then you test them, okay, you know how good the training went. You don't really know how they will react in a live situation. When I'm talking about assessment, I'm talking about running drills. Have someone call the secretaries and ask them to open a file. See what happens. You don't have to wait until this happens for real. You can test. And finally, employ cyber threat intelligence. Next slide, please. So this is a generic program timeline. If you want to protect your mission-critical systems, assuming you don't have any of these elements in place, you would need, on average, 1 year to do that. It's a process. It doesn't happen in 1 day. It doesn't happen in 1 month. You need about a year to do that. This is a generic timeline starting from vulnerability assessment and some training, establishing cyber threat intelligence capabilities, and finally implementing the SOC, the Security Operations Center. Next slide, please. When we're talking about a vulnerability assessment program, the idea is that you basically take a team. There are a lot of expert companies in this area, and you basically tell them, hey, please run a penetration testing on my organization. The process usually includes a phase, fact-finding phase. If they're doing it out of the blue, they don't have any information about your organization, they will try to gather intelligence about you. By the way, not that difficult. Trying to find your email addresses, trying to find what type of operating system you use, trying to find what type of database you use. Well, it's quite easy because a few months ago, you decided that you are going with an Oracle database and you published a press release saying that you're using Oracle, right? It happens, right? So intelligence gathering is a very important part of this phase. Have someone try to attack you without any inside information about the organization. By the way, they'll usually succeed. And then have them collect the information and present you with the findings. The findings are the basis for a plan, for a strategic plan on how to close the gaps. Now, do not assume for a minute that you will be able to close all the gaps. It will never happen. Cyber is a very dynamic domain, so you will constantly have to improve your defenses. However, you will probably be able to close most of the gaps and create a safer, a more secure organization. Next slide, please. And one more. Okay, now cyber training, well, we recommend having at least 2 important types of training. One, train your people organization-wide. Have your secretaries, have your employees, have your cleaning staff in a classroom and tell them about cyber risks. Have them become aware. Awareness is key to cyber protection. Then you need to train also your cyber operators. You're going to run this Cybersecurity Operations Center, even if it's small scale, someone has to look at the results. But there's another piece of training that I recommend, and this is training your senior executives. They're usually the weakest link. They make a lot of decisions about cyber, but they don't really understand the cyber risks. So train them. Train your board members. Train your executives. Have them hack. Have them touch a computer and see how easy it is to hack into a system. By the way, we run these trainings. We have a half-day program, 4 hours, for C-level executives, board members, and so on and so forth. By the end of the 4 hours, they're hacking. Okay, this doesn't mean that they are able to develop malware, but this means that they understand the risk. Next slide, please. Okay, so cyber threat intelligence. Now, everything today exists in the darknet. If someone's going to attack you, you can know about it. You can know about it. You just need to have someone monitoring the right places within cyberspace for you. So there are very good companies that provide these type of cyber intelligence services. By the way, not very expensive. And paying someone to constantly monitor cyberspace and see if your company is mentioned, if someone is asking questions about systems that exist within your company, can help. You may be able to mitigate the next attack. Next slide, please. Yeah, it's probably mine. Leaving the phone on in a lecture is not very good. Okay. Next slide, please. So, the Cybersecurity Operations Center. Okay. So, here you can see a diagram of a large-scale cybersecurity operations center. You may not need everything here, but let me give you a brief about the components here. So you need a cyber threat intelligence capability, but having this cyber threat intelligence capability as a standalone component is not as effective as taking this information and pushing it into a cyber intelligence fusion center. Okay? Have a machine analyze the results for you and not analyze it through your analyst, who may become a bottleneck. Then you have monitored branches or systems. Monitor them at the network level, at the server level, at the operations level, and take all this information into the Cyber Intelligence Fusion Center in order to detect anomalies. So you fuse intelligence on one hand, operational data on the other hand, in order to detect anomalies and create, and this is a very important buzzword. If you want to remember something from my presentation, remember this: situational awareness. This is the name of the game today in cyber. Detecting a singular attack is very, very difficult. Detecting a complex attack derives from effective situational awareness. Then you may want to have an engagement portal, the manner in which you can engage with your employees. Think about a multinational company. You want to be able to reach every one of your employees. Think about a state. You want to be able to reach all your constituents. You want to be able to alert them about a potential attack. The Israeli CERT was in charge of basically monitoring Israeli cyberspace, did an amazing job following the attack, the 12 May attack, the Wannacry attack. They basically reached each and every citizen. They published a list of do's and don'ts in the news, in the popular news, in the newspapers. Now, you know, my mother is always the way I measure effectiveness of these actions. So she was coming to me on Sunday and say, hey, did you know that we shouldn't click on links from unknown sources? So my answer was, duh. But the fact that she internalized this shows how important it is to engage with your constituents or with your employees. You need to have training capability. Ongoing training capability is very important. You don't want to train your employees only once. You want to be able to constantly train them and to constantly test them. And finally, you need to have the ability to analyze the attacks as and when they happen in order to be able to employ countermeasures for the next attacks. And yes, I think that businesses from a certain size and onwards need to have their own cyber lab, need to be able to analyze the attacks within a self-contained environment and not rely on external consultants for that. It's very important because you need to be able to react in very, very short time frames. You can't rely on issuing a PO to a certain consultant to analyze an attack because the attack may increase, may accelerate, may impact more computers. You need your in-house capabilities. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about ELTA's vision for Maryland. Next slide, please. Okay, so we view ourselves, especially through our subsidiary ELTA North America, as a major part of the Maryland environment. And our vision is to establish here a cyber innovation center. We have yet to come up with a date for this, but this is our definite vision. We would also like to proceed and help Maryland establish a version of the Israeli Cyber Companies Consortium. There are so many stakeholders here in Maryland that are part of an amazing cyber ecosystem. And I think the Governor Hogan mentioned that Maryland today is #1 in cyber. So creating a consortium of Maryland-based entities that are able to provide end-to-end solutions would definitely be a game changer. Next slide, please. We believe that ELTA can contribute a lot to the process by creating a cyber innovation center, by helping to lead the collaboration effort. There are a lot of lessons learned from the Israeli Cyber Companies Consortium, and by driving the development of innovative cyber products and IP and intellectual property. Now, the name of the game in cyber, and this is a very important takeaway here, cyber is an arms race. And it's an arms race where the bad guys are winning. It's easier to attack than to defend. This is why we are constantly hearing about successful attacks. Now, the bad guys are sharing information, they're putting a lot of effort into innovation, and they're constantly ahead of us. The only way to be able to mitigate the threat is through constant innovation. We need to come up with better and better capabilities in order to be able to counter the emerging threats. We also need to collaborate amongst ourselves because no single company, no single entity has all the knowledge. When we pool our knowledge together, we can create effective cyber solutions. And my last slide, please. Now, this slide shows our vision for Maryland. And basically, we would like to help Maryland become the center of the US cybersecurity ecosystem. Last slide. Thank you. So thank you very much for listening.